and welcome back to the Unfiltered Trainer podcast. I am your host, Gina, aka Gina Marie Fit, and as I am recording this podcast, I'm actually getting ready to watch the Super Bowl at the gym. I'm going to go work out and watch this game. I personally am rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it'd be cool to see back-to-back Super Bowls, but I also know that the 49ers have been so good this season. So in my personal opinion, I'm just hoping that it's an extremely close, exciting game. But I bring that up because today's podcast is going to talk about boundaries. And something I posted on Threads this week, and I feel like it's really important, is the fact that just because you don't like somebody or you don't like something doesn't give you the right to shit on it or to shit on that person. And I really am appalled, honestly, at what social media has become, watching people drag Taylor Swift. And I'm not a Taylor Swift music fan. I'm not. She's just not my cup of tea. I'm not like a poppy, vibey, love song kind of person. But you know what I am a fan of is empowering other women who are doing the absolute most. You know why I do like Taylor Swift? Because Taylor Swift is a businesswoman. No matter what she does, when she helps people, she changes their entire lives. And as she was on that Eras tour, I was learning from other friends of mine that are like diehard fans how much she was giving back on that tour. When she was in Tampa Bay, she donated a bunch of money, and she gave all that money to the people that work for her on the tour. That girl is worth $1 billion. That woman, I should say, is worth $1 billion. And what she does in a philanthropic way is so inspiring and empowering because I want to make more money in my life. Not to buy the Louis Vuitton, not to buy the G-Wagon, but to help people. Because I work at a facility, I'm a healthcare worker when I'm not personal training. And one of the facilities I work at is in a lower economic area. And I'm going to get choked up. I feel like this is getting caught in my throat, honestly. The amount of homeless people we meet who are at the hospital for a variety of reasons, and then they come to our facility for rehab, and then they don't know what to do after they are done at that facility in a state that is so full of people who are retiring. It just blows my mind the limited resources we have for the aging population, how poor healthcare is in the state of Florida, and the fact that we have so many people who don't have their basic needs being met in a state that has an insane amount of wealth coming to it. This is all we can do for people? This is it. And then we trash somebody because we don't like them who is doing more than the majority of the population in those areas to help their own community. And somebody said it best when they said, Taylor Swift doesn't hear what you're saying about her. Just like a lot of celebrities or social media influencers, they don't hear what you're saying about them. But your daughters do. Your children do. Maybe your nieces, nephews. The people you're around are hearing you spew hate. And you really need to go and think about yourself, honestly. If you're one of these people who just drags these people that you don't like it's one thing not to like somebody, to express frustration with somebody. It is another level when you drag somebody just because you don't like them. I don't like her music, but I am inspired by her business ethics. I'm inspired by how hardworking she is. She was on a global tour and she managed to put out an album. She does the absolute most. And whether you agree with her opinions, her relationship, whatever, I still think it's so freaking weird that people's political opinions and who they associate is part of their personality. People hate her boyfriend because of an ad he did. Really? We're going to sit here and judge people because they disagree with our belief system? Isn't that the point of America? To be free, quote unquote, because you're not free in this country, but you're freer than most countries. Aren't we supposed to be able to love who we want to love, be who we want to be, as long as we're not causing harm to somebody? Why do we insert ourselves into other people's lives and then judge them because they live differently than us? I always like the quote that says, Don't judge others just because they sin differently than you. And it's the truth, because every single one of us has faults. We have our own issues. We have our own experiences. We have our own journey, which is the point of this little conversation we're having, is we all have our own journey in this life. We are all going through things, have gone through things, and will go through things moving forward. And when we're dealing with people who are different, we are first to judge, second to understand. First to make a comment, second to take that moment to be introspective and see where that person might be coming from or see what they're going through. And I've personally been dealing with this a lot in the last almost 6 months now, because I have a traumatic brain injury. And honestly, I have had a very hard time with interactions with people because of my speech, because I say things and I'm trying to explain something or the wrong word comes out, or my processing in my brain is taking a lot longer than I would like people to know. And that is the point of TBI rehab and all this stuff I'm doing. But I'm faced with a lot of challenges, and it's why I still can't share the podcast, because I just cry, honestly. And I'm not somebody that, crying is not my first emotion. I usually just shut down. But it makes me emotional to think the judgment I've endured over the last 6 months, conversations that have been had about me, and then my own conversations with myself, just how disappointed I am of how out of shape I've gotten, how disappointed I am that my vocabulary is so limited still, how frustrated I am with myself because how long it takes me to do something, or it takes me twice as long to read a book. And I was explaining to somebody, they're like, Gina, why are you beating yourself up so much over this? And for those that don't know me, what is something that's really important is, for me, being who I am and, where I've come from. I didn't come from money. I'm not the prettiest person in the room. I'm not the most athletic, but I am smart. And had I not been as intelligent as I am, I would have never made it through college, because I didn't have a lot of time to study because I had to work so much. And I was playing soccer, and I was a dual degree student. So I was getting a biology degree and a psychology degree at the same time. And because I was an accelerated dual student, I was on a scholarship. And when you're an accelerated student, you have to take 19 to 21 credits every semester. It's a lot. And I played soccer, and I had 2 jobs. And so I didn't always study the most, and I got good grades, but I could have got excellent grades and graduated with multiple honors had I had the time to just be a student, but I didn't have that ability. And so the fact that my equalizer, as I call it, has been my intelligence. I have been in rooms and situations where I probably shouldn't have been had I not been so successful because of how hardworking and intelligent I am. And I always say, my friends will say, Gina always figures it out. She gets hit with something, Gina will always find a way to figure it out. And I'm so sick of that being my life, because I wish things could just be easier, but that's not the hand I've been dealt. But I will always figure things out. And so I've been navigating having a TBI, very much reserving who I've been around, limiting my socialization, because the doctors had actually ordered that for the first 4 months. And now it's given me a lot of time to reflect on who I am, who I'd like to become, where I'd like to see my life go, and the fact that I had such a rough last year and I'm still having some difficulties. And that's what today's podcast is going to be about, is boundaries. How to set them, how to enforce them, because you're going to deal with people. And I'm somebody that always has a lot to say. We know this. I'm a total Sagittarius, instigator, always has a quick-witted comment. I was a lot funnier before my accident. I am just somebody that always does have an opinion and has something to say. But I've learned that your opinion isn't always wanted or needed. And that's the result of people having boundaries. And so you need to learn, and we're going to work through it together today, how to frickin' tell people to chill. How to tell people to sit down, step back. You don't have to entertain interactions. You don't have to be in circumstances or situations that make you feel less than. And boundaries are like a map of how you want to be treated what you want your life to be and what you want your life not to be. And it can really help you help others in your interactions, your relationships. And then also it can help you really realize that people have experiences. And just because you feel a certain way, your feelings are valid. But your feelings are just that. It's a reflection of your situation, your experiences, your journey. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't actually define that person that you have those feelings about, in the sense of understanding interactions, relationships, conversations. Boundaries are your ability to aid yourself in these situations. And so people always ask, like, this was a very popular requested podcast, and things people ask for, how? Like, how do you do this? What does it look like? And so general statement before we get into nitty gritty of today is, when setting boundaries, you really got to start small, and you got to focus sometimes on one at a time. And you have to be clear. And that's why you want to start small, because you need to focus on your needs and be as clear as possible with those needs. And then once you understand those needs, you need to practice those needs. I am somebody that does have a lot to say and can be like quick with their tongue. And so I've learned that in circumstances that are difficult for me, I will just walk away. I'm getting better at this. I take a breath and I just walk away from the situation, because I don't want to say something I'm going to regret. I want to make sure I have the time I need right now to process my thoughts, because in situations of high stress, my brain just shuts down, which is not great. And it's harder for me to interact with people who I'm being met with resistance by. And so you can practice this by writing out your boundaries, writing out what you want to say, writing out what that looks like, and then just keep it simple, because the more involved the conversations, the more emotions are involved, it really like muddies the waters and things can really go off the rails. And so in general, there are two types of categories I feel like are important, and we're going to discuss them: rigid boundaries and open boundaries. Rigid boundaries are when you keep others at a distance, where you might seem detached. You have few close friends. You avoid close relationships. And there's a lot of reasons we're going to talk about all of this. Open boundaries are when you get too involved. You might find it difficult to say no. You overshare personal information. You seek to please others because you're afraid of rejection. And there's technically a third category. We're going to kind of break it up throughout this podcast, when you have flexible boundaries. And what's really important about those that are worthy of being flexible are knowing who you are, who the people you're interacting are, and who is worthy of you being flexible. And that's kind of the premise for how we're going to go into this podcast. The benefit of establishing boundaries is that these behaviors are what you will and will not accept from others, and it establishes what other people can expect from you. And this is what's really difficult. And this is something that until literally 2, maybe 3 years ago, my biggest flaw is that I will do anything for anybody. And that's not the flaw, because I think that is a trait I will never change, even if people don't deserve it, honestly. My whole statement on my life is that I treat others the way I would want to be treated, regardless of how they treat me, regardless if they speak ill upon me, because I'm going to answer to the way I lived my life one day. I'm not going to be asked why that interaction with that person, I said that. No, I'm going to answer to how I lived my life. And I want to be proud of every interaction, circumstance, situation I have been through, and be able to be okay with myself if I die tomorrow. And so what's important in establishing boundaries is it lets people know what they can expect from you. There are people who I limit my interaction with. I'm going to continue to do this more. There are people who I will pick up the phone no matter what the time of day is, because they are my true inner circle of people. And there are people I know, love, and trust. And those people are those people I'm going to be flexible for, because I know they reciprocate my energy, my efforts, my love, and I don't have to question if I wasn't in a room that they were in and somebody was speaking on my name. I know those people have my back and I have their back, and I would do the same. And that's really what 2023 and 2024 is currently teaching me, is who are the valuable people in your life who, even though you may not see as routinely, who makes an effort, who supports you in what you're doing, who is there for you when you're having a rough time, who is understanding of your circumstances, And for me, I'm doing a lot, and I'm not always being met with the greatest support because I'm doing a lot. People have seen it as competition. People have, tried to tear me down. I had a situation a couple weeks ago that was very unfortunate. And it's just sad to me that people see somebody that's just trying to do more with their life as competition. And I haven't publicly spoken on this because I really don't know how to say it in a post or convey it in a video. But if you listen to the birthday episode, you know where I was at in August. Like June, July, how the months go. I'm literally working through this on the podcast. I'm going to leave this in here because it's how my brain is. July and August, I was not well mentally, and I couldn't see clear. My life was just not what I wanted. I was having a lot of really unfortunate interactions with people. It was so difficult. And then the accident happened. And it's weird because I didn't obviously need to be in an accident that caused a traumatic brain injury. And it's sad that somebody not paying attention has cost me so much and will continue to cause issues potentially now the rest of my life. What I will say is that accident, after the fact, when I couldn't hold my head up, when I couldn't stand without passing out, I was home for a period of time. And I just remember laying on that couch thinking to myself, Gina, this is not it. Because I really had to think about my life. And I survived this situation. And I was like, okay, you are given a second chance to rewrite your narrative. What are you going to do differently moving forward that's actually going to be worthy of you still being alive? What can you do with your time that will be valuable because you are still alive? And I just remember thinking, okay, podcast, go. Started writing about the podcast. My charity organization was already in the works. I wasn't talking about it because I had like a million meetings, conversations, and then I wasn't posting on social media for a lot of reasons, including the fact that like I was literally like my vision was so blurred. I couldn't see straight. That was fun. I just made a list of things that I knew I needed to accomplish while I still could. And so one of those was changing my job and getting out of a toxic work environment that was truly killing me. It was killing my spirit. It was just making me so exhausted and like hateful to being alive because I was miserable. And I realized that I was somebody that has a lot of friends. And I'm realizing I had a lot of acquaintances. Because I went through some things that I've never talked about on this podcast last year. And I don't know if I ever will. In one way or another, you'll probably learn about them if you weren't experiencing them with me. And I realized that not everybody around me was supporting me. And not everybody around me wanted to see me succeed. And it was really heartbreaking when I realized who was and wasn't worthy of my time. And it's that sad part of life that sometimes you just have to transition. And as you're transitioning and changing and transforming, not everybody is going to be worthy of coming along for the ride. And if you continue to entertain those people who aren't, you will continue to revisit those lessons And until you release the binds that they hold on you, you will not move forward in life. You will continually be held back, which is why boundaries are so important. Because now I tread very lightly when I meet people, and I go on intuition like I used to go. After being in such a toxic situation last year, I didn't trust myself anymore, and I didn't trust my gut. And it's burning me right now, honestly. I'm being burnt right now in a situation that I was questioning a couple months ago, and I something felt wrong about it. And I was like, no, Gina, like, don't be judgmental. Like, give it time. No, Gina was right. And I got burned. And I'm working myself out of a situation because it makes me sad because I want to expand my horizons. And it's like, I don't know what it is about just people in Tampa, but people are different down here. And it's really difficult that like you have so many of these interactions and difficult situations with people that it's like not abnormal, which just makes me really freaking sad because I really like being here. But these interactions make me like want to truly just pull back and interact less and just establish, work boundaries, have your personal relationships outside of work, having that time. Just, it sucks that you have to be so calculated, it feels like, but it really isn't calculated. It's setting boundaries, which is why today's episode is us episode. We're doing this together, y'all. And so the types of boundaries, so we had categories, right? The types of boundaries that like I've been researching the most are physical, like your personal space, your privacy, your body. You have sexual, like your intimacy concerns, being touched, accepting the people, the love you want. Intellectual, which is a concern for your thoughts, your beliefs, not being respected when somebody dismisses another person's ideas and opinions. Emotional, a person's feelings, not being comfortable sharing their feeling or time. And financial, how you want to save, spend your money, where you want to invest your finances, which is huge because, we're working a lot more and affording a lot less these days because things are so expensive. And so you really got to ask yourself, like, what do you want? Where do you want to spend that hard-earned money that aligns with where you feel valued? And so it comes down to knowing how to separate your feelings and your stuff from somebody else's. And I feel like this is hard. And this is where I feel like I've had the biggest issues with people is projection. People who are not healed from their own circumstances, experiences, previous relationships will project their own insecurities onto you, and it will change your interaction with them. And this can happen in a variety of ways, from friendships to work environments to people feeling competition when you're doing something that they wanted to do. And I couldn't understand this because I've been experiencing so much of this in the last 6 months of just difficult interactions with people. And then I heard a TikTok video, and I'm going to play it for you because it nailed my feelings and my experiences. And I hope it's going to help you too, because this is how we're going to transition into how we're going to define boundaries, why we need to define them, and how we're going to set them.
The toughest pills you have to swallow is understanding that people will intentionally not support you because they're not where they want to be in life. And I've seen this play out so many times. You'll have a village and so many people that support you when you're first starting something or when you're first starting out, right? And then you realize that as you kind of ascend the ranks and you start to get to where you want to go, these people will go AWOL on you, stop answering phone calls, they'll stop commenting on your posts, they'll stop liking your posts, they'll stop picking up the phone. And it's like you realize that these people will exile themselves from you because your success is so threatening to their ego because they are not where they want to be. And I just find it so odd because it's like something that you learn the older you get, realizing that a lot of times people will cut you off for literally nothing. It's not because you did anything. It's not because you acted weird or strange, because y'all have never had a situation where that could possibly be apparent, right? The only reason they're cutting you off is because where you are going in life and where they are going in life are two completely different stories. And the fact that they've made this reality that they were going to be successful and achieve so many things, and the fact that that is not coming true for them at the moment makes it very hard for them to support you without feeling some type of way about their current disposition in life.
I don't think I had ever felt so heard or seen in a video in my entire life until that came across my For You page yesterday. And I was really struggling with something. Like I actually was like on the verge of tears yesterday, just out of pure frustration. And I was just struggling mentally. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I don't like talking about people if I don't have like a positive thing to say or they're not there to defend themselves. I just get really uncomfortable having to talk negatively when I'm going through a situation if I don't have like a means to work around it. And so that video was just everything to me because it made so much sense and it just continues to prove why boundaries are so beneficial. You know, they're not just your identity, but they limit your exposure to stress. They help with your emotional and physical fatigue. It helps with autonomy and it helps with your safety in relationships. And so if you're like, okay, Gina, like how do we get to baddie status? Like how do we finally figure this out? We now see why we need to do it. Obviously, it makes sense, but how do we do it? And so to set and maintain boundaries, number one, you need to reflect on the reasons you're going to do this. Why is it important and how you're going to directly benefit? This isn't about anyone else. This is about you and your needs. Number two, start with a small amount because as you're going to realize this could get complicated or complex. Because you're going to have to sever ties with people. You are going to have to lessen time with people. Something that I personally believe, and if you listen to the little welcome episode, episode 1, you know that if I find somebody is toxic in my life, I don't care who they are, I'm unfollowing them. I'm not muting anybody in 2024. If I feel uncomfortable or our interactions don't inspire or empower me, I'm going to unfollow somebody. And it's time we stop acting like social media is real life. Social media does not define or dictate anybody's life. It's a part of our life. That's optional. And you don't have to follow people just because you interact with them. It is your space, it is your page, and the whole point is to be social. So why are we friends, quote unquote, with people who don't like our posts, who don't interact with us, who silently stalk our page or even block our limitations on pages because of whatever reason they need to? Like, I don't want to be following somebody that has to block me or has to mute me. Like, I don't want to be a person that isn't inspiring people. So if you feel like you have to block me, please just unfollow me because I would rather that. I'm not going to take it personal. You don't want to interact on social media. That's fine. Nothing's going to change in my life, but I'm done using the mute button. I am either following you, engaging with your posts. Every time I see you post something, I'm going to be liking, commenting, like hyping you up, being real, being supportive. If not, then I'm just unfollowing you because I'm not going into 2024 with energy of 2023. Number 3, consider setting boundaries early on. And this is where I have failed miserably. Like I gotta laugh because I'm trying to set boundaries late in interactions and it is not going well, which is why I was so proud of myself for finally quitting my toxic job. Because I was still contemplating it the day I wrote my resignation letter. Because I just have this weird fear that I'm still carrying from last year. And I am just so afraid of retaliation, honestly, in such a small town because people have such big mouths and think because they have an opinion, they have so much to say that it's valuable. When in the reality, remember, your opinion isn't always wanted or needed, and nor is it always justified. Number 4, consistency. And this is what I'm working on, is establishing boundaries and keeping them consistent. If you know you have an energy sucking friend or coworker or somebody who makes you feel a certain way or projects their own insecurities on you and it's exhausting for you, limit your time with them. Limit your time with them, be consistent, limit your conversations, limit your interactions, unfollow them on social media if you don't want to see them. It will aid in your mental health so much more when you don't have to see them unless it's a requirement. Number 5, establish time for yourself. And to all my little baddies that listen to this podcast and are my hardworking overachievers, something that I am still trying to figure out is how to sit down. How do I watch a movie and not edit something? How do I just be in the moment and not be looking at my phone responding to DMs? It is extremely hard to just be and do for yourself when you were never given the permission to do that. And so part of setting boundaries is establishing time for yourself, your needs, your interests, where you don't have to concern others unless you want to. Number 6, communicate when those boundaries are crossed, which again goes back to consistency. Why did you start this process? What do you want to get out of this process? And what are you going to do when somebody puts their toe over that line and you are triggered? Number 7, practice self-love and engage in activities you enjoy. So you're like, wait, how's that different from establishing time for yourself? Establishing time for yourself means that if you're reading a book or you're doing something and somebody calls you and you don't want to pick up the phone because you're enjoying yourself, don't pick up the phone. Like if you are so busy during the day that you don't ever have a minute to yourself, set time for yourself. But I also want you to get into the practice of self-love and self-care. And that doesn't just mean bubble baths and like getting your nails done, but that means working on yourself, your journey, your struggles, your setbacks, those feelings, when those triggers, working on yourself, and then engaging in activities that truly promote a happy, healthier, more balanced life instead of choosing to work more or taking that work phone call when you're not being paid. Truly setting boundaries in all aspects of your life is going to be the game changer that leads to you actually feeling sane. So now that you know how to set boundaries, why we're going to set boundaries, what do you do when those boundaries are crossed? Because it's going to happen. You really need to respond appropriately, addressing the overstep promptly, calmly, in a respectful manner, and explain to that person why this is necessary for you. Be consistent with your enforcement of your boundaries. You have to stand firm in your limits and ensure that those boundaries are respected by the people that you have to interact with on a consistent basis. So how can we do that? Communicate your boundary again and again and again, because you will have those people with those strong ego-driven personalities who are so focused on them, where they're going, their needs, that they may cross your boundaries because you weren't clear from the start. And in these situations, the person may not necessarily be trying to disrespect you, honestly. This is just where important, clear, respectful communication comes into play. And if you're one of those people that just says, oh, I just need some space right now. No, be very distinct and concise. I could use X amount of time to myself to decompress, or I don't want to talk during this time and I'm going to step outside of the room. Just setting a simple, clear boundary goes so far, and you don't have to be rude about it. Second thing is, when a boundary is broken, you have to set some type of consequence. If you've set a boundary and somebody oversteps that boundary, you have the desire and option to let them know what's going to happen if they don't respect it in the future. And establishing a consequence lets them know that you are serious about your consistency and enforcing your boundaries. And if they don't show you that they respect that, that is your opportunity to sever ties if you can, or limit that interaction with that person unless you absolutely have to. Next one is limiting your engagement in certain situations. Where you are able is a great strategy for maintaining your boundaries. And so if you need to limit time with a certain friend, coworker, or family member, then show them that you won't tolerate the disrespect they give you. And you can do that by limiting your engagement, which just means spending less time with them, doing less interaction. This is a great one with social media. If you have somebody that triggers you, or just somebody you just don't get along with and your interactions are not favorable, and you have to see them at work, or they're your family member, like, let's be honest, they're a family member, and you have to see them at a family function, you don't have to see them outside of that. So you don't have to see them posting on social media. So just unfollow them. It will be so refreshing when you're exposed to that negative energy less. Next one, being persistent. We talked about this earlier. If you're consistently saying yes, the things that you want to say no to, this is the reason why your boundaries are overcrossed and you are exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally. You need to be persistent with your boundaries, how you want to be held accountable, but then you need to also be consistent with how you want to spend that time. And so if you don't want to go somewhere and it's not a requirement, don't go. Or if you're tired of picking up the phone every time that one friend talks about their toxic ex, don't pick up the phone. One thing that's big, and I dealt with this a lot at work, is when you're dealing with a toxic boss or supervisor who doesn't respect your work-life balance, or you as a person, because that happens. You have to be persistent and straightforward. And one way to avoid exhaustion and burnout as work is if they aren't respecting your work hours, like responding to messages after your set hours you're being paid for, you can just send a respectful email and explain, like, I'm happy to deal with this. This is sent after the time when you get off work. So you could say, I'll be happy to address this matter tomorrow. Or something that I started doing was I just stopped responding. Like when you're texting me or emailing me at 7:30 at night and I can hear my work computer alert going off, like, you don't pay me enough to capitalize on my time. So I would just limit my interactions and I would just stop responding until I was on the work clock. And there's nothing they can do to you because that is the hours you're being reimbursed for work-related matters. And it was so nice when I just stopped responding and just left my computer charging and would hear the dinging going off. And I didn't do anything. I just went about my day. Lastly, remaining calm is very important and not always easy. And there's nothing that pisses you off more when you're frustrated than somebody telling you to relax. But calm communication with somebody who's pushing your boundaries can show that you can hold space for yourself and you don't have to denounce that person. And it's really nice that you can be proud of your interactions when you're being in a situation where somebody is really stressing you out and disrespecting you. If you can take the higher ground, remain calm, and be the bigger person, you'll be so happier with yourself and your interactions in the long run. And it will help you to de-stress because then you won't have to be worried about what you said or how they're going to interpret it. You just want to be proud with your interactions in all aspects when you can. And obviously we're human beings and we're going to say things or have a certain tone, but it's great if you can remain calm, take that breath, and then proceed forward. The biggest thing that I want you to take from today is just realizing that if you accept less than you deserve, love, respect, you will continue to get that tenfold in your life until you really take the time to set boundaries and establish your needs, your wants, your desires, and let those you interact with consistently know this so that you're able to freely live your life and know that no matter what you may go through, you will have the appropriate support system to help you navigate the wild journeys we will face in this lifetime. So today, your little takeaway is to establish and set boundaries with those who trigger you in your life, those who are the most unfavorable in your interactions. And if there is a social media component to it, I want you to not mute them, but unfollow them. Social media is not real life. It is not life or death. It is an app that could be gone tomorrow. Don't define your worth or your value by your follower count or likes on a post. Define who you are and what you want your life to look like by the people that show up for you and start showing up more for yourself and defining what you will and will not tolerate going into 2024. All right, y'all, that's all I got for you today. Please, if you haven't yet, go subscribe to this podcast. Leave that 5-star review and comment, because that is what helps podcasters the most. And let me know when you do it, because I'm going to be continuing to share those and do a monthly giveaway in 2024, because I want to pay it forward as much as I possibly can, because this is a journey that's been years in the making. I finally was brave enough last year to do this, and I want to continue to make this podcast the most it possibly can be, and it be something of value, empowerment, and inspiration. All right, y'all, stay tuned, and we will chat soon.